Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 189. So glad you could join me. Today's guest, Alexis Rhone Fancher, will be here in about 10 minutes. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do this. We love poetry, and I know you do too, so please do click the like button and share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, leave reviews on iTunes and Spotify. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be greatly appreciated. We always start out with a news poem, and we have Ryan Boyland here today to talk about this poem about Keith Olbermann and Angel Reese. And here he is, Ryan Boyland. Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. So to start, tell me about this. I think a lot of poets don't watch sports, so maybe have no idea what, and they might not even know that Keith Olbermann used to be on the desk of SportsCenter, where he was great until he became this unhinged, I don't know, political commentator. But he was my favorite. It's so surreal to see him now, because he was my favorite SportsCenter broadcaster at 15 or 20 years ago, whenever that was. But tell us about this. We had a poem about the women's NCAA basketball championship in Caitlin on Tuesday, and now here's a second poem about the women's national basketball championship. So tell us what happened and set up the poem for us.
Yeah, so I don't follow Keith Olbermann all that closely today. I am aware of his past as a sports commentator though. So this poem it's coming out of last week's women's national championship game where LSU beat Iowa, and a lot of people at the end of that game saw Angel Reese, one of the LSU players, kind of celebrating in the face of Caitlin Clark, and the response that Angel Reese gave was basically a reference to what Caitlin Clark had done the week before. And no disrespect to Caitlin Clark. She's a baller. She does what she does very well. And I think that what happens in athletics a lot of times, people chirp, people talk, it happens, it's natural. And most of the time it just kind of gets like skated over. It's fine, it's not really that big of a deal. But a lot of people, after they saw Angel Reese do it, Angel Reese do something that Caitlin Clark had pretty much done exactly the same the week prior. They were really berating her. They were calling her ghetto, a thug, really a lot of undue criticism. And Keith Olbermann was one of the people kind of piling on. He called her an effing idiot. And he got a little bit of pushback from Shaquille O'Neal, for example. And when I kind of heard people getting upset about this. I'm like, why, why? Um, I think that we see it in male sports often, and so this kind of celebration, this kind of chirping, and so it felt a little bit unfair to one criticize women for doing the same thing, and two to criticize a black woman so harshly for doing the same thing. And so this poem kind of came out of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because it was like a counter to Caitlin. You know, when Caitlin Clark had all the news too, all week. It was Caitlin Clark. It was like she was going to, destined to win, based on the
Mm-hmm.
media headlines. And then she had made that gesture, and then to make it back after you beat her, it's just such a natural sports thing to do. And then to become even a cultural topic is shows a lot of what. The subtext of a lot of what goes on within our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so why don't you go ahead and read this poem? And Keith, I'll let you read the title because it's long.
Yeah. Questionable title choices on my part, but we're rocking with it. Keith Olbermann calls Angel Reese an idiot for celebrating in the face of Caitlin Clark, and I want her to do it again and again. I want him to wake up in a cold sweat with her name on his tongue, choke on each micro French tip finger. I want his daughter named Angel and his son named Reese. I want him to see tigers everywhere. I want the pump to read $102.85 every time he fills up, and I want him to know why. I was 11 when Don Imus, mouthful of tombstones, skin, cracked porcelain, called the Rutgers women's basketball team nappy-headed hoes, and I still don't think they buried him deep enough. When your only sin is being the best, which God do you pray to for forgiveness? They wanted to let Britney die for less than a gram. I can't be silent now. I mean, Keith, Right now, somewhere in East Baton Rouge, a girl with skin the color of mahogany and cherry oak and ash is being told she's too dark to wear red. Keith, I don't remember the last time I heard a Black girl's name in the news for anything other than dying. Keith, to be Black and woman in America is to both birth the noose and teach it to tie itself around your neck. I am not asking for permission to celebrate, only that you recognize why she would. Keith, she can't be quiet when her disrespect was anything but. Keith, remember Angel, manicured hand pointing to finger, lungs full of the sweetest air, joyful, determined, alive.
Yeah, great poem. Yeah, that was Keith Olbermann calls Angel Reese an idiot for celebrating in the face of Caitlin Clark, and I want her to do it again. I'd say great title in the the Chinese tradition of those long titles that set the whole stage for what's going on. But great poem. I can't stand how annoying the news is, but it's so great we can turn it into interesting and important poetry. So thanks so much for writing that poem and for sharing it and for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yep. Take care. That was Ryan Boland with this week's poem. And we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest right now, Alexis Rhone Fancher. So sit tight, and I will be right back. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Tonight's guest on Rattlecast is Alexis Rhone Fancher, longtime friend of Rattle. Alexis, her poem, When I Turned 14, My Sister, or Mother's Sister, Took Me to Lunch and Said, was chosen by Edward Hirsch for inclusion in the Best American Poetry 2016. Her poems in Flash Fiction have been published all over the place, 200 journals, including Rattle, a whole bunch of times. Her street photography is published worldwide as well. Since 2013, Alexis has been nominated 29 times for the Pushcart Prize, a whole bunch of other awards too. She's the author of, I think it's 8 or 9 books already. Her most recent is Brazen, which just came out from NYQ Press. And here she is, Alexis Rhone Fancher. Hey, Alexis, how are you?
I am well. How are you, Tim? You look in a while.
I'm great. It has been a while. I remember my author photo bio that when people asked me for a headshot was one you took for so long in your studio there in LA. So thanks for that. That's one thing people should know is that Alexis is a great photographer as well as a poet. And she does so many, photo shoots with poets around Los Angeles. So if you see a photo of a Los Angeles poet, chances are pretty good it's Alexis's photo. So thanks for being here, Alexis. Do you want to start out with a poem?
I do. I'm going to start out. I'm going to start out with a poem that was published in Rattle a couple of years ago. It was written for my best friend Kate O'Donnell, who passed away of breast cancer in 2014. It's called Tonight at Last Call. Jay calls me his brown liquor girl again. His voice, dark urgency, like when we were attached. I let him grip my hips, slow dance me back to that lust, to the parking lot, his car, my tube top, a trophy in one hand, a bottle of Southern comfort in his other. He pours that sweet Joplin down my throat, guides my hand between his legs, drives to the Malibu motel with ocean views, vibrating beds, and once more our delicious thrashing. Complimentary KY where the Gideon should be, the insomniac waves rocking us long before my marriage and now after. When I ask him which part of me he loves best, Jay answers, what's missing? Tonguing the place where my nipple had been. He doesn't mind the mastectomy scar, the one my husband can't bring himself to touch.
Yeah, that was one of the poems from Brazen. Tonight at Last Call, Jay calls me his brown liquor girl again. That's from Rattle. I think Rattle 63 maybe, or somewhere along those lines from Brazen. The newest book by Alexis Rhone Fancher. Alexis, to start out, I just like to get sort of an overview of what poetry has meant to you over the years, because you are a poet. You sort of came into poetry later, right? I mean, and then you sort of exploded with, I think you have like a book a year almost for the last 10 years or so. And I don't know if it's true. I think your son having died had a lot to do with it, right? Or is that just a projection on my part?
It did in a way. It did in a way. My son died of a very rare cancer at the age of 26. And from that, I wrote a number of what I call the dead kid poems. But my other hat, I would call it, is erotica, is very sexually charged poems. I'm an equal opportunity lover, men, women, I always have been, far before it was really, cachet to do that. So I think I waited so long to write, Tim, because I didn't have much to say. I was busy living. 99% of the material in these books is autobiographical. I just wanted to really be ready. And once I studied with Jack Grapes starting in 2008, and Jack gave me a toolbox and the keys and said, here, all right.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it ever since. Yes, Brazen is my 9th book, and my 10th and 11th will be out next year.
So what led you to those workshops with Jack Grapes? Of course, I took Jack Grapes' workshop, I think a few years before you, like 2006 or so, which is a way he teaches this method writing for people who don't know, which is sort of taking the principles of method acting and applying it to the creation of poetry, which I think is the way poetry tends to be done, even if we don't have a guideline for it. We still have this, you get into the character of the voice that you're inhabiting, even if it's a persona poem, like the first poem we saw. But what was it that led you to Jack Grapes' workshop in the first place? Was it like out of, after all those years, why Jack Grapes and why then?
I was seeking, and I was working out with a trainer who had been a friend of mine. I was doing a lot of EST training, landmark, that sort of thing. And I met Matthew Hetznecker. And I said, Matthew, I'm looking for a writing teacher. And he said, well, why don't you come with me to Jack Grapes? And I did, and studied with him for about 8 years.
And what do you think, what was the primary lesson that you learned from Jack? Is there's something to pass on?
Well, there were two. The first one, when I told him I was making noises about maybe going for an MFA, he told me he'd lock me in a closet until I had learned some sense. The other thing was that he gives you permission. Anything goes. This is back in the days before he taught online, when he was teaching in person. And I just felt that it was a safe space, and I could write and read the kind of work that maybe wouldn't be as easily accepted elsewhere. What I did find when I started submitting it, I started getting people saying, I hate pornography, but I love your work. We'll publish this, we'll publish that. So it's been a real journey, and Jack pretty much gave me permission.
Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem from Brazen.
All right. Let's see. This one's one of my favorite poems. It's called Power Play. When my lover tells me I cannot say no and I protest, she parts my legs, says, yes, baby, yes. I do what I'm told. No becomes a foreign country. I take it as permission, open season. So when the waiter asks if there'll be anything else, I peruse his menu. I'm stuffed, but I say yes, cram my mouth with macaroons and chocolate. And when the Lyft driver seduces me in the rear view, eyes me like prey, asks, may I kiss you? I say, yes. And when the long-legged woman I've long lusted after at the gym wonders aloud if I'm single, asks me to dinner and a movie, I say yes. And when she invites me into her bed, what can I say but yes, yes, yes? And when my fan in Nova Scotia begs me to be his muse, to sanction an explicit ode to my breasts, my ankles, my lower lip, a poem he'd never show his wife, I cannot say no to his lust and delusion. Now he wants to climb me, sublime me, shoot me full of stars. Is this what you want too? He writes, and I answer, yes. And when I return to my lover at last, and she sinks into the heady dampness between my thighs, looks up at me and asks, have you been faithful? I say, yes.
Mm-hmm. That was Power Play by Alexis Rhone Fancher from Brazen. And you see some of the photography that Alexis includes in this book. This is one of her photographs. Many of the photographs or poems have photographs next to them, which have sort of interestingly, slant relations to the poems a little bit. So it's interesting to read through the book and look at the photography too. That's Brazen by Alexis Rhone Fancher. So Alexis, what is it that draws you to erotic verse? People ask, a long time, like, why are so many poems about death and sex? And my answer is because those are the two things that people don't talk about honestly in this culture, and so we talk about them all the time because we're like skirting around the subject in these weird ways, but we never actually address them in a deep, nuanced way. And so that's the taboo, and just things that are unsaid are always the stuff of art and poetry to me. Is that what draws you to it, or is there something else?
I grew up in a very permissive time in this country, and when I was 17, I fell in love with an artist, a painter, who was 42. And all he drew were nudes and naked women. And he drew me a lot. And he turned me on to pretty much everything, from Sharon Olds to Satie to, the great poets that I'd never read before. And I found that was where I belonged. That was my place. I had a lovely note the other day from Suzanne Lummis saying, you've definitely found your niche. And that's what I started writing. And then when my son died, the devastation took me in another direction. And there are almost 3 books, 2.5 right now, about him. But I wanted to have more of just, why do I just have to be an erotic poet? Why do I have to be a person in grief? Why can't you sometimes join the two?
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea that people are so uncomfortable in this society about sex. I just had a book published in Italian, Stiletto Killer. The Italians think that sex stuff is great. They have no inhibitions. And you come here and people are still very uptight.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is? I mean, is it the Puritan sort of roots that we have, or what is it that makes us so prudish about sex in this country?
I think part of it is just being prudish. The idea that you have an X rating for a sex film and a G rating for a murder, or armies killing each other with impunity. That's our society. When you go to Europe and they look at America from the way the Europeans do, we're a gun-toting Wild West. We're ludicrous. We're a laughing stock between our prudity and our permissiveness with the gun culture. It's kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you think, the whole idea of what America's about is like the land of the free, and the idea that we'd be so free would make sense, but we're really not. And it's not something I've thought a lot about. I just wonder what the source of that is. Like why wouldn't we be more open about those topics?
Because we're a Christian nation,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. I mean, and that's the real truth, you know. The way the country's going right now, I don't want an abortion, don't have one, but don't tell me what to do. It's some people thinking that it's their way and their way is right. And there's no compromise.
Mm-hmm.
I just read an impasse, sad impasse.
Yeah. Well, let's hear the next poem.
Let me see. Where is number 3? I wrote a series of famous poet behaving badly poems for a dear friend of mine who shall remain nameless. And there's about 8 or 9 of them, I think, 8 of them. And this is one. And actually, they're all here in Brazen, all of them. So the famous poet asked me for naked photos. 1. You are a forbidden planet, he says at the bar after his reading when all the hangers-on have gone. He drains his 3rd martini. I smile. Encouraged, he puts his arm around my shoulder, confesses he can jack off only once to a photo. He needs a constant supply. 2. The famous poet smells musty, shop-worn. He pops a breath mint, runs a hand through his silver mane. You are my muse and savior, he says, right after he tells me his 2nd wife no longer likes sex. He smooths an aberrant bang from my forehead. Are you clean shaven, he asks, staring at the mystery between my thighs, or do you roll au naturel? 3. The famous poet wants me to take a selfie in the ladies' room, pull my skirt up and my panties down, and I admit it gets me wet. Like him, I'm not getting any at home. I want to wrap my legs around his head. 4. The famous poet swears his wife is cool with his serial betrayals, that they inhabit different countries in the same small house. But I've seen his wife at parties, how his philandering makes her flinch, the face of desperation, choked down Sylvia Plath style. The face that wants me to suffocate like Sylvia did and watch. The face that says, once I was you.
And that was the famous poet asked me for naked photos. And the question I always wonder, and of course I think everybody else does too, is, and you can feel free to give the, what is that called? The I can neither confirm nor deny, the non-denial denial. But is that a single person, or is it an amalgam? Is it a metaphor? Because it works sort of as on a lot of levels, actually. So I always wonder if it's, thought of someone specifically or not.
All of them are written to a particular, rather famous poet, except for 2. One of them was written for a friend of mine who had a very bad time with a poet. And the other one was written about a poet married to a very famous poet who just was such a slimy guy. And, came on to me and God knows everybody else. But mostly they're about one man.
Well, very interesting to hear that. Let's talk about your writing process a little bit. You said that most of your poems are autobiographical. What triggers a poem, and how do you get into the memory of it? Because I can't remember who says that we all have books in us by the time we're 10 years old or something, because we all have we all have complicated lives, and that we don't tend to get out. So how do you get back to your memories and turn them into poems? Is there a process for you that involves doing that, or do you just something occurs to you and then you write a poem about it?
Well, that would be really nice, but no. I have a very simple writing process. I write every day for at least an hour, no matter what, because that's what's important to me. I have had this really kind of chock-full life, and things just come up. Or I'm writing one now. I saw something in the Smithsonian about why barns are painted red. because they catch the starlight. When something like that comes up, I put it into a little folder on my phone. I write down things constantly from, when I get up in the morning. If I'm making love with my husband, he knows, wait a minute, babe. And I'll turn to my phone and I'll write that down. I've done that ever since I lost a poem in a booth at Toroni Restaurant on Spring Street, and I couldn't find it. I was sitting there with friends, and I said, I got this poem, and I talked about it, and I didn't write it down, and that was it. Gone, memory gone. I went back and I asked them, I said, did you see a poem just kind of floating around here in the air? And so that was it for me. I write everything down. I write it on my phone. I have a iMac that it converts to. I have notes. I have pages. It's just like breathing for me. I can't not write.
Mm-hmm. And has it ever been a struggle, or is it always just this, process of, the writing's always there and it's maybe a struggle to find the time?
Early on in my writing career, I had the good fortune to meet Ray Bradbury, and I, just in total awe. And I said, so you don't seem to have any problem writing. No, what do they call that? Writer's block crap, And he said, look, this is what I do. I write in every room of the house. I have something going on my computer. I write on a yellow pad in the toilet. I have one in my yellow pad out in my shop. I have one next to my bed. He said, I always write, but stop before I write the last line. So that when I come back to this, I know where it goes. And that's what I do. And Mr. Bradbury, no writer's block, just not enough time.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Never having to confront a blank page, because I think that's the most intimidating thing, is the unlimited potential of the white space that, So, Danny Mask over on YouTube, and I should say that if anybody has any questions for Alexis, as you see Danny asking here, feel free to leave them on the chat window, either on Facebook or YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, I'm not following that, so find one or the other. But Danny Mask asks if there are any topics that are off limits for you. Is there anything you won't write about? Because the thing that has always stood out is just how fearless, and you just don't care what people say or think, it seems. Is there anything that you would avoid?
Bestiality and sex and abuse of children.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go to there. That's about it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you've, that makes complete sense. Is there anything that you, thought twice about publishing, or has everything that you've published, you've just not worried about the reactions and just ran with it? And,
yeah, ran with it.
Mm-hmm.
I came of age at a time when there were no limits, and I've lived my life that way. And, by not having to be dependent on my writing for a livelihood, all my life I wanted to be a full-time writer with enough money that I could keep the wolf from the door. I didn't care about being rich, except in friendships and experience. And I've been, for the last 20 years, living that life.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I wanted, and I owe it the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is a dream, is that as good as that you imagined it now that it's here? 20 years of
It's
that.
better.
Yeah.
Better. I'm married to the same guy for over 20 years, whom I adore and who loves my work. I write every day, and my friends go, oh my God, I'm going to get a week. I'm going to go to a retreat in Oregon. And I'm like, I go to a retreat every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I got nothing but time,
Yeah, well, that does sound like heaven to me, as I carve out maybe 10 minutes before the show to write a little poem. That's about all I have. And it does seem nice to be able to do that. And I don't know, do you... So you said you write every day. Is there a routine involved in it? Is there a certain time that you do it? Or is it just, do you know at some point today I'm going to write?
I write every day, usually in the morning, although the last couple of years I've gone from getting up at dawn and going to bed at 9 to staying up to midnight and getting up at 8 in the morning and writing in the evening, which is very different for me. And I was really shocked that it showed up. but you got to follow the muse. And I also write with a partner quite often. That book Duets that I sent to you was written with a partner. We just got together every Tuesday, and we had to have work to share. And having that kind of deadline and impetus, I think it's great for anyone, you know. Put those things up for yourself and then fulfill them.
Yeah, definitely. Let's hear another poem. Next up, I have She Says Stalker, He Says Fan.
Okay, would be number 4. Yeah, this was in San Pedro Review a while back. She says stalker, he says fan. And it's got a little epigraph here from Rita Dove's Canary. If you can't be free, be a mystery. The slip shadow between superstar and the door. She's that long stretch of longing, riding shotgun from nowhere to LA, a bottle of Jack Daniels snug between her thighs, always some fresh loser at the wheel. She's the Zippo in your darkness, a glimmer of goddess in your God-forsaken life, her voice a rasp, a whiskey-tinged caress. She gets you, and you know the words to all her songs. Follow her from dive bar to third-rate club, clapping too loudly, making sure she makes it home. She's as luckless in love as you are, star-crossed the pair of you in your dreams. If only we could choose who we love. Tonight the bartender pours your obsession one on the house, dims the lights in the half-empty room as she walks on stage, defenseless, but for that 0018 Rosewood Martin she cradles in her lap like a child. If you ask nicely, she'll end with a song you requested night after night about the perils of unrequited love. You'll blurt out your worship into her deaf ear while her fingers strum your forearm and her nails break your skin. Give the lady whatever she wants, you'll tell the barkeep. Like that's even possible.
Yeah, another great poem that is She Says Stalker, He Says Fan by Alexis Rhone Fancher from her book Brazen. Alexis, there's a question here from Sharon Front. I think I might know the answer. But she says, I love erotic. How do you get past the fear of writing it? And so my follow-up would be, did you ever have a fear of writing it?
No, I guess I was born without that. No, I grew up in a very liberal household, books everywhere. The only admonition is I would have to be able to reach it, to read it. And, the James Baldwin and the Michener and all the erotica was on the top shelf. So I got a ladder. And I've just been reading like that ever since. And I don't know. Why would you be afraid to write your truth? You know, I don't depend on this for my livelihood. I depend on this for my sanity. And if I couldn't write the truth, when? If not, this is what I teach. And this is what I say to my students when they're fearful. Instead of not now, when? When are you going to be bold enough, fearless, and write your truth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more great advice. Jimmy Papa says, I have trouble writing about moments in Vietnam where I heard racial comments made. Are there limits on using the N-word, or do I just tell the truth? Have you ever faced a similar situation?
I'm not sure about what the question is.
Using like racial words like the N-word, things like that. Do you have any restrictions like that besides for the two things you mentioned? Are there any, is there any advice on that kind of delicate situation?
Wow. One of my favorite poets and best friends is Tony Glugler, and he wrote that poem famous with the N-word in it. And it mattered because it was in context. I do not use racial slurs in my work. That's pretty much the only thing I would never do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was married to a Black man for many years. My child was interracial. Oh, the idea of, no, that I would never do.
Yeah. So another thing that you do is photography, and I've always wondered: did the photography precede the poetry, or did they start at the same time? How long have you been doing that, and how did you get into photography?
I was 10, and my dad and mom took my sister and I to San Francisco. My dad bought me like a little Instamatic camera and about 10 rolls of film, and I shot everything I saw. And when I got home, he had the film developed, and then he bought me a Nikon. He just said, "You've got something here," and he recognized it and he nurtured it. I've been shooting since 10. I've been writing crappy poetry as a child. I've always been a poet and always been a photographer, and I just think I grew into it and had the opportunity. So they're equal for me. I'm writing a poem with my eyes. I'm painting a picture with my words.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so what is it? I've never had a photographer on, I don't think, on the Rattlecast in 189 episodes that I can remember. So what is it about? One of the things I love about your work, I love your street work. Like there's so much street photography that you do about LA, just documenting LA and walking around. How do you approach? How do you approach that? Do you have an eye for a photograph all the time while you're walking around? You're always ready for it, or do you like certain times you go out and look? And if so, what are you looking for? Like, how does the how does the photography process compare to the writing process?
Well, I think the photograph finds me. I lived downtown LA for about 8 years, way in the middle of downtown, 6th and Spring. And I would just take my camera, i.e. my trusty cell phone, with me. And because it's a phone, people would not know that I was photographing them. And I could just, it's almost like you frame something in your eye and then you sort of catch it. My husband will drive and I shoot out the window. When I moved to San Pedro, I'm living up on the bluffs of San Pedro, everything shifted. It was much more nature. The people were at the beach. I just shoot what's there. I go looking, and the poems just sort of show up.
Mm-hmm.
Not really go, "Oh God, what am I going to write about today?" I'll just look at my notes and go, "Oh, I'll write about that barn, the red barn."
Yeah. Do you think about like the framing and the lighting and the composition of the shot as you're taking, pictures? Like, or is it just all organic and natural?
It's the difference between street, where everything is random and it just sort of occurs, and I document. When I shoot poets, when I shoot people, I work in a studio. I control the light. I control the room. I control the back part. Yeah, everything is under control. I like the lack of control when I get out of there and just shoot what's on the street. One time I was in the metro downtown, and I was just sitting with my phone and shooting all the people as we were traveling down. And this woman looked and she goes, "She's photographing us." And the metro stopped, the doors open. I grabbed my husband and we ran. It was sort of, I don't know if you've seen Day of the Locust,
No, I
but
haven't.
there's a scene where everybody sort of turns and the crowd gets angry. And I have that dream sometimes at night that lady found me and was not happy. So
Oh, wow. So how often do you talk to the people that you're doing that photography with? Is it always sort of a clandestine effort, or I think I remember when you were shooting for me, we were walking around LA a little bit and we talked to somebody and there was sort of a guy there's some photos with. I remember that. So how much do you do that? How much do you interact with the people that you shoot?
if it's street, I don't interact at all.
Hmm.
It's just a grab shot. But in the studio, I want to coax that side of you that no one's seen before. I want you to show me who you are. And that's the person I want to shoot. I think the best compliment I ever got was from a woman. I did her photos and she said, "Oh my God, that's what I think I look like on a very good day."
Hmm.
And that's what I want. I want you to just, and I should say that I'm in the process of working with Eric Morago at Moontide, and we're going to put out a coffee table photo book of all the LA poets I've shot over the last 12, 15 years
Oh, that's great.
next year.
So,
Send you.
yeah, please do. For the street photography, do you worry about like the rights and permission to use the photographs? That's one of the things I always wonder about too. Because if I know if you're like seen from the street, it's public, but then if you're using it for certain commercial uses, there's like might be issues. I don't know. So, is that something you worry about, or do you just how does that work?
I don't worry about it. If you're on the street, you're fair game. Is kind of how, that's sort of the sensibility. I know there are places though, and that you have to have permission if you have a person in it. And of course, if I do, I will. But nobody's going to come after me. I mean, what are they going to do? Those people in the metro maybe would, devoured me, but I think not.
Yeah.
I don't worry.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hear another poem. What's next?
Let's see. This one is a little more serious and very autobiographical. I was in a really bad accident when I was 20, and everyone died but me. And I spent almost a year in the hospital and never been quite the same. But yeah, it's called My Body is a Map of Scars. A girl with good legs wears dresses. My blind date sighed over dinner. My body is a minefield. My body is liability, is albatross. The gash across my eyebrow where nothing grows. The crisscross that mars my rebuilt leg. How full-length mirrors avoid me. I chew prime rib thoughtfully, make 2 trips to the salad bar on my ugly legs. My body is betrayal. My body is stain, is renegade. The sad limp, the gouge at the base of my throat. I order an after-dinner cognac, then another. My body is car crash. My body is plunder. My body, not my body. I watch his eyes disappear into the long-legged perfection of a girl in a tiny skirt, the green of a ripe avocado. No lattice-laced scars furrow her past and future. I dream a lover blind to trauma. Look at my palm. See how the lifeline ends and then restarts.
And that was My Map is a Body of, My Body is a Map of Scars, I should say, from Brazen. A few people on Facebook have mentioned that the stream is choppy over there. If it is, I think it's a Facebook issue. Go over to YouTube. That's what I would just suggest. But anyway, and they're, join I think there's 55 people watching on YouTube right now. So join them and just leave Facebook. I think they have, I think for some server, it's an issue. But, so Alexis, what this poem is a good one to ask you about, because I wanted to ask about your line breaks and the way you format a poem. Because there's sort of a freedom and sort of a haphazardness to it, but then without losing a feeling of intentionality and that there's a reason for the shape a poem takes. So what do you think about the structure of a poem? Why do the poems of yours look the way they do on the page?
I think I like a poem to be one page. I like it to be all right there in front of you. And, occasionally you can't do that, but I like when I'm writing, I'm seeing it on a page. I have more and more I've more and more wanted to write prose poems. And I've done a lot of that because there are no line breaks. And I'm just going to lay it out there the way it is. But with something like My Body is a Map of Scars, it was almost like tumbling through the poem. And there's this sort of energy that blah, blah, until, and then my hand, there's that lifeline. And it really is. It starts and then stops and starts again.
Yeah. Huh.
I have learned a lot about line breaks from my early work. One of my dear friends and someone I write with and edit with is the poet Lorraine Lockey up in Northern California. And she is really strict about line breaks, and she has changed how I look at them. So you'll see in this book, for example, is very different than How I Lost My Virginity, which was very early on. I just wanted to feel right on the page.
Yeah. That's interesting. And you mentioned, you wanted to look on one page and sort of have a shape. Does that have anything to do with the photography? Is there sort of a composition that you're seeing in the poem too, in the way you would a photo? Is that part of it?
Wow, I'd never thought of that before, but I think so. I think so. That's very good, Tim. That's
well, thanks. The other thing that I wanted to follow up on.
I think it's a composition thing. Just the way they come out.
Yeah.
I mean, occasionally long, and also I think of when I look on a page and somebody sent me a poem, I don't want it to go on and on. Or if I'm in a hurry and I'm reading, Rattle, and I'll look at and I'll pick the one that fits into the time and space I have. So I think all of that comes into play.
And the other thing I want to ask about, I didn't know that story about the accident you were in when you were 20. Do you think that has something to do with being fearless, of having, laying in, being in a hospital for that long, your lifeline stopping and, thinking you might not live? Does that make you, appreciate your life for the moments in a way that you hadn't before that? Was there like a philosophical impact that had on you that's made you so fearless? Is that part of it, you think?
I think the fact that I was the only one to survive, and that I not only survived, but came back and thrived. And 3 years later, I traveled all over Europe for a year. I was young, I was fearless before, but not focused. And now, looking back on it, I think that really did play a part. I cheated death. I should not have. The only reason I survived was my fiance was driving. I had been very tired, and I laid my head down kind of on his lap and curled up. And the doctor said that the only thing that saved me is I was relaxed.
Oh, wow.
But I remember looking up and seeing people all around, and then they used the jaws of life. If you've lived through that, what are you going to be afraid of? As far as fearless, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
It just never occurred to me to write anything other, and I've never been afraid. Maybe I should have been,
Well, that's fascinating too, just as a metaphor. And I've heard that about, drunk drivers too, that a lot of times when people are drunk driving, they're the one who survives because their body is limp and loose and not, rigid. And so when they hit the wall of the dashboard and then through the window, it's like, bouncy and mobile and breaking their own fall instead of stiff and, and that's a way that if you go through life fearless, you go through things that you might not otherwise. So I think that's a really cool metaphor too for how life is psychologically, right?
Well, you cheat death. I cheated death. I should have died. Everybody died. The people who hit us, the people who... I think it does. I never really thought of it before, Tim, but I think you're absolutely right. I think I thought, what have I got to lose? And then there's the part about being true to who you are. And I tell this to young poets. I tell this to my students. Why wouldn't you write your truth? What's going to happen to you? Nothing. There's, the truth police is not yet out there. I mean, they're coming, but not yet.
Yeah, excellent point. Let's keep on. We have a few more poems I want to get to. Let's do another poem.
Okay, that was what?
I had next is At the Bar After His Reading, another famous poet poem.
I thought I'd do a few of those today. At the bar after his reading, the famous poet still can't recall my name. But I think you're exceptionally fuckable, he grins. He doesn't remember how the booze flowed, how the room spun, how I fell into his bed. 4 martinis down, he nibbles a toothpick-speared olive, gazes soulfully at my tits as if they offer a clue. I sidle up to his ear. Here's a tip. It smelled like a Holiday Inn. The famous poet adjusts his paunch, eases another notch on his belt, diddles with the bar food, orders another round. I slosh in the sea of his forgetfulness. I want to tell him how it felt to be touched by fame, how he never returned my calls, how some nights the only way I get off is to imagine his words, how even tonight I can't keep my hands off him.
Yeah, it's another great famous poet poem. After at the bar, after I was reading the famous poet, still can't recall my name, from Brazen. So what is the reception of your books like in the sort of regular poetry circle? Like, you remember you mentioned that Jack Rape said like run from MFA programs. Do you participate in things like the AWP conference, and how, how is the reception to more erotic poems? What's the reaction to that, and to poems like this, which everybody at AWP would be trying to guess who that poet is, and probably have many options for who it might be. So what is the reaction to your work in that crowd of regular poets?
I have a degree in theater, a BA in theater. No poetry training except with studying with Jack, but I call myself a feral poet, and I'm not trying to be flip. I really mean it. I don't have any academic fruit salad on my name. I don't. AWP, when it was here in LA, was really nice. I went. I have to confess, I would not go out of my way. It was wonderful, though. I hosted Dorian Locks and Joe Millar for AWP because it was 5 blocks away from my apartment downtown. I'm sort of by proxy. I have a lot of friends with a lot of fancy degrees. I think not having all that has been a blessing, because I don't have any restraints. I don't care. I'm not going to get tenure. If I teach as my invitation, it freed me, because I didn't have any of that, and I find a lot of people in academia are afraid. And I don't know that I wouldn't be, but not a problem.
Well, it is a problem for our culture, I think, that, that's the place that we should have the least fear and most willingness to explore. And I agree that there is a fear behind that. And everybody I've talked to who's been there and left has talked about the freeing feeling of not being afraid anymore, which is just, that in itself is frightening, I would say. What about the marketing angle for your books? Are you able to tap into that? Because erotic literature is great selling. We had what was that? That movie
50
that became
Shades of Grey.
Yeah, there you
Yes,
go.
yes.
That and I know somebody else who writes under a pen name erotica novels, and they sell so much better than his stuff that he considers serious, because there's just such a market for that relative to poetry, especially, but to literary fiction too. Are you able to get in front of that audience for poetry, and do people that like erotica are they turned on by erotic poetry, let's say?
I don't think of myself as someone who has competition from, what is it, E.L. James. I find most of that bodice ripping romance, quote unquote, erotica boring.
Yeah.
I don't read a lot of sex poems or sex work. I really want to keep my vision pure. I know it's an odd word, but I market my books myself. Before I was a poet, I was a marketing and advertising executive for about 20 years. And I learned a lot about getting yourself in front of an audience, selling your books. I do a lot of marketing, but more on my own. And I'm pleased to say, after 9 books, I have an audience, and people ask me when the book will be out. And I have a friend in Canada who buys 10 copies of every book and brings them to the bartenders at the bars he hosts to. I have another friend, these are people who will sell it for me. Am I a best-selling author? No. But does that matter? not so much.
Yeah. Well, Deb T puts it nice over here. I think it's Deb Tannenbaum. She says, it seems to me that Alexis' poems aren't erotica, but that they include erotic elements. And I think that's completely true. And so I was wondering if it could be like a gateway, like we always want to get more people. The hardest part of my job for 20 years has been to try to get people to read poems who don't usually read poems. And so I'm kind of hoping, any avenue we can find, whether it's Instagram or, erotica, whatever we can do to get more people reading poetry is a good thing. Have you found that at all, that you've been sort of a gateway into different poetry from people who are looking for, stuff with that title?
I would hope so, but I'm not aware of that. It never occurred to me, but a lot of my press is word of mouth. Mm-hmm. And this new book, a friend of mine just bought 20 copies. She's giving them to all her friends. It's good enough for me right now.
Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem. We have two left. So we'll do a poem and then a couple more questions, then the last poem. So.
No, I did want to say one more thing. Yeah. When I was studying with Jack Grapes, the end of every 10, 12-week class, there would be a reading at Beyond Baroque. And for maybe the 3 or 4 first times I was there, I read erotica. And the 5th time I read from the Dead Kid poems. And people came up to me, a lot of people, and said the same thing. That poem was interesting, but it's not what we were here for. We were here for the erotica. And I learned, that there was that audience. And I pandered to it. What can I say?
Well,
all right, you want another poem?
Yeah, another poem. But I think there's no problem with that when you're still writing from your authentic self, right? Having your audience in mind is something that's worth doing, because if you're writing, you want to be sharing things with the world and you want people to appreciate them, right?
It's true. There's a big part of me that loves that people read my work, and I'm excited and grateful. And there's another part of me that just writes. And as long as the work is good, that's enough for me right now. Mm-hmm. Someday in the future, somebody will find this book. Look at what this woman was writing in 2023. Oh my Lord. But that's in the future. Uh-huh. This was written for a very good friend of mine who, again, will remain nameless, but this guy is really hot. And it's called Grab Shot. You Ferrari, baby. You Lotus Elan, you dream man, smooth moves, always some sleek bitch on your arm, and me side kicking just afterthought. So I shoot you, replicate you in oversized prints spread out on my bed like facsimile. Those blown up biceps, fine-tuned torso, face up on my pillow, your perfect pores. How the camera loves you, baby. Those smoldering Billy D shots aimed straight at a woman's vulnerability. How you juice them, seduce them, your voice dropping an octave when a woman calls and you get all berry white. You've kept up the upkeep, changed the oil, sleek, toned, you alpha baby, and Romeo, you candy apple, you metal fleck, the wind buffs glitter all around you. That night at my studio, after one too many Hennessy's, we stand toe to toe, and I turn my lips to yours, ask, why not me? You grab my ass with 2 hands, squeeze and shrug. Baby got no back. And I flash to that chorus line of slow-eyed beauties you bedded, each one bottom-heavy, riper than I could ever be, as if derriere were the measure of a woman. Let's get back to work, you say. You rev up your engine. I flick on the lights. Oh, baby, you shimmer, you gleam. Stand up, I tell you. Pull the shirt over your head. Now you can't see me for real. You who can't see the beamers for the beaters. You who wouldn't know love if it bit you on the ass.
That is Grab Shot. Another poem from Brazen, a Brazen poem. So nobody has mentioned it yet, I don't think, but in talking about the fear of writing erotica, to me it seems like the real difficulty is that there's so many cliches involved, and there's so much there's that feeling of, how bad the typical shades of gray erotic fiction is writing, that sort of clouds everything, and it makes it difficult, I think, to write anything like that. Is there any advice you would have in order to write erotically that doesn't fall into those tropes and doesn't use that tired language and it comes at it in a fresh way?
I think the best advice I could give to a person that wants to write erotica or sex is to write the space around it. If you look at my work, there's almost never a dirty word, or nobody's ever, fucking, or it's not about the act. It's about the space around the act that for me, it changes it from porn to poetry or good writing. I don't like writing for effect, and I don't like to shock people. I think you have to be aware of cliche. If you've said it that way, I mean, it's like, oh, she was so wonderful, she lit up a room. I mean, really? Think of new ways. How could you talk about, I mean, with Grab Shot, I just wrote the space around it. You never see anything, and never touches her until he grabs her ass and said, "That's not good," Mm-hmm. That would be my advice. Right around it and be honest. What's the worst that can happen? I had one guy early on. I sent my work to this literary magazine, and I got back this really terse, like, "I will not be publishing these poems in my magazine." Okay, that's fine.
Well, it's interesting because it goes back to the photography maybe too. I've heard, photographers say that, you're not photographing objects or people, you're photographing the light. And it's a similar kind of thing. It's the, what's around the objects you're actually focusing on is what actually matters for the shot, and so it's similar with a poem, I'd say.
Well, it's all about the light.
Yeah.
Whether you're inside and you're setting up the lights, or if you're looking at it, yeah, it's about the light, and it's about the space around it.
Mm-hmm. Another question from Monica Dobos. She says, you confessed your love for your husband and your strong relationship. Has he ever objected to any of your poems?
No.
I think if he did, he wouldn't last very long. I think
he should not have married me. When I was looking to find true love, a good friend of mine took me, this was in 2000, so 23 years ago. Good friend of mine took me out to lunch, and she said, there's this new thing called Match.com, and you should go on it, and have somebody take a picture that looks like you and write, you're a writer, so do it. And I did, and I met my husband within a few weeks. And I lived in Culver City. He lived, 5 miles away in Mar Vista. We never would have met. And I had all these naked, not me, photographs I'd shot all over my house. And my best friend said, well, if you really want to meet a good man, you're going to have to take those down. And I said, if I meet a man and he doesn't like those, he's not good for me.
Yeah, that's
and
perfect.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny because sometimes when I introduce him to people, they look directly at his crotch. But aside from that, nah, he's just, yeah, he's not only okay with it, he's happy.
Well, before we finish up with the last poem, what do you got? You said you have 2 books coming up. Are they different? What are the topics, or what are those books like that are coming out soon?
Well, the one that I'm very excited about that I'm working on now is called Triggered, or Trigger Warning, we're not sure. And it's a bunch of in-your-face, very erotic poetry that I am working on with a Canadian painter. Her name is Kenna Baradell. She is brilliant. Talk about fearless. She sent me a copy of a painting, huge painting, that has me in the center, naked, except for wearing red boots, a funny hat, and I'm holding a book. And all the people on either side are naked. And I said, Kenna, I want to use this as my cover of my next book. And she said, well, let's write a book.
Oh, wow.
So I've got that coming out probably before the end of the year. And I believe Kenna's listening. So, hey, Kenna, Um, and the other one is called My Criminal Boyfriend. And it's the saga. I guess the log line would be Bonnie and Clyde take a road trip in the 70s. And that I've been writing flash fiction for that. And I studied with John Bradingham. He teaches a flash class, and I just started really working on it. I think by the end of the year, that'll be ready to send out into the world.
That's interesting. You mentioned, I mean, you call it fiction. Is that autobiographical, or is that is it fiction, or is it based on a true story?
Um, the woman who, my best friend Kate O'Donnell, who was the poem I read first, who died of breast cancer. This is her story.
Mm.
She lived in Chicago. She met a B&E man breaking and entering, a guy named Laddie, an Irishman. And, she was going to college, and he pulled up one day and he says, I'm going to California. She says, excuse me while I drop out of college.
Oh, wow.
And they went, and it's a bloody saga of murder and mystery, and true, mostly true. I think I've kind of made a couple parts a little more dramatic, but pretty much true.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few times the sort of change in the times. Do you think it's possible for anybody, young today to live the kind of adventurous life that you did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, you gotta want it, and you gotta be fearless. I was fearless before I knew what it meant. I just came out that way. I think it's possible, to just. I'm working with several people who are writing brazenly, and I think once they see where that goes, you can never go back. You could never just write plain vanilla crap, could you? Everybody does that.
Well, excellent. Well, let's hear one last poem before we to wrap it up.
This is the last poem in the book. It pretty much says everything I want to say about my life and myself and my beliefs. It begins with an epigraph. There's a God for broken people, Roxane Gay. It's called The God for Broken People. This is the God for the second rate, the one who waylays you at a party, plies you with bourbon, fucks you in the kitchen, makes you walk home in the rain. This God shines in the runoff. This God hustles the night. This God minds the maimed, culls emotional cripples off the top like cream. This God is a shape shifter, a dumpster diver, the God who loiters at the corner of Dolorosa and despair. This God drinks alone. The God for broken people trolls the city for discards, marries the exploited with the lost. This God sweeps up the miscreants, gusts their darkness into night. This is the God of no hope, no money. This God has your back when you backslide. This God bets on you to fail, hides in your broken places. This God is willing to wait. When you're ready to surrender, remember this is your last, best chance. This God will not stick by you, won't give you false hope. This God will kill you or save you. Choose.
Yeah, and that was God, the God for Broken People. Again, more poems from Brazen, Alexis Rhone Fancher's newest book from New York Quarterly Books. Alexis, thanks so much for being a guest tonight. It's just always fun talking to you, and great seeing a new book. Always love your work, and I appreciate it. So thanks for being here.
I love your work too. American Fractal is one of my favorite books.
Oh, thank you.
I keep it on my nightstand to this day.
Aw.
People need to know that you are a kick-ass poet. Thank you for having me. I've looked forward to this.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, I have too. I just love your work and your photography too, which I should have flipped to some photos just so people can get a sense of this in the book too. There's these beautiful photos. And I'll show a few really quickly before you go. But here's some street photography. This is the one on page 19, by the way, we're looking at. And so there's just great photos throughout this book too, Brazen by Alexis Rhone Fancher. Thanks again, Alexis. It's great to have you.
Thank you. I really had a great time.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, it was Alexis Rhone Fancher. Stick around for open lines. We're not done yet if you're new to watching, but that was Alexis Rhone Fancher. Her newest book, Brazen, is the one we were focusing on, but she has a whole bunch of books. There's Erotic, New and Selected right here. She mentioned Duets, which I also have, where she wrote with Cynthia Atkins, who we've also published in Rattle. And she's the author of 9 books, so check some of them out. You can find it all at alexisrhonefancher.com. Pull it up on the screen really quickly. Here's alexisrhonefancher.com. The website, spelled like it is right there, Alexis, Alexis. Rhone is Rhone, and then Fancher is Fancher. That's alexisrhonefancher.com to find all of her books and all of her photography, and there's so much there. So do check that out. Now we're going to have the open lines, as always, and if you'd like to participate, you can share whatever you'd like. You can share poems for the prompt this week. You can share poems about current events. You can share poems you published recently, something you wrote just now, something you wrote a long time ago. One poem probably, but anything you'd like to share. And here's how you do it. Go to email first and email your poem to openmic. That's openmic@rattle.com. Openmic@rattle.com. Find that, email your poem, and then I can show it on screen like I was for everybody else. And then find the Zoom link to join the Zoom that Alexis was just on. I'll paste it into Facebook and YouTube right now. Only if you'd like to share a poem, though, because we'll be sitting right here and not going anywhere if you'd just like to listen and watch and enjoy. But if you want to share a poem, find that Zoom link and pop on and join me. We have about an hour to do that. We'll get to as many poems as we can, which is always fun. So sit tight, and I'll be right back with the open lines. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Now, the prompt for this week, if anybody had a prompt poem, was based on last week's guest. Had a poem. It was Dick Westheimer, of course, and his title poem repeats the word America, I believe, right? Very often. So we decided to do a poem with has a noun in every line. So this was the prompt. This was pick a noun, either randomly or with intention. Write a poem that includes that noun in every line. And so I had a very busy week. I'm flying to the NFT NYC conference, which is kind of like the AWP for like digital art. And we're trying to introduce poetry, more poetry there, and get poetry treated like digital art. I have a panel with Katie Dozier. We have some poetry gallery readings and stuff. And so I've got to like get all my work for the week done in like the weekend. Very little time. All I had time was the time that I was walking the dog. And so I thought, how can I do this while walking the dog? It has to be a short enough poem that I can keep it all in my head. So that's what I did. And here is my tiny little poem, Impatience. Impatience. But now it's spring, she says, and with that springs to the window as if the springs on her feet were real. Outside, the violets spring from soil, the cherry blossoms spring from branches, slowly springing in answer, spring. So that is Impatience, my tiny little poem, written with the number of feet grow and then shrink for some reason, like flowers growing maybe? I don't know what I was even thinking. But that was my my attempt for this week. Let's see what you have. And let's go first to let's go to Dick Westheimer, who is first and last next week. He's first in line right now. Hey, Dick, how you doing?
Excuse me, I'm doing great. It's Monday night. It's a rattle night. And we've had 3 dry days here in Southwest Ohio. So my fingernails are dirty. I have no beach tar on my feet.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's beautiful here for the first time. It was like 25 degrees like 3 days ago. And today walking the dog, I was like sweating. And so that's why I was thinking I got to write a spring poem. It really feels nice. The sun is out. The birds are singing. The snow banks have all melted away. And it's definitely here finally, April 10th. Anyway, what do you have to share with us?
Well, I did a prompt poem, believe it or not. I sent in. And it just happened coincidentally. I'd read A Supermarket in California by Allen Ginsberg about Walt Whitman, which has this sort of repeating frame of calling out Walt Whitman's name. And I thought, there's some poets I could do that for.
Interesting.
So this one became a sort of honorific to Maxine Kumin.
Oh yeah, great poet. I know you're a big fan of hers, and I am too. She's great. We've published her. There's an interview with her in Rattle 20. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Well, you should check out Rattle 20 because that's it's got Maxine Kumin in there.
You have them in stock?
I'll check. I think so.
Well, yeah, okay.
That'd
be great. That'd be the only way I could get a hold of it. Oh, I love that. So yeah. So anyway, this is my my ode to Maxine Kumin, titled "When I Am Eaten, Who Will Mark the Eating?" And it does have some lines drawn from Maxine Kumin poems. And the epigraph is, "Not where he eats, but where he is eaten. A certain convocation of politic worms are even at him."
Oh, that sounds very modern for a Shakespeare quote.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, he did a few things pretty remarkable. When I am eaten, who will mark the eating? Geez, Maxine, you had me at excrement. Who knew until you that we are gods whose creation is what we shit, that these fragrant piles are work worth honoring? And oh, Maxine, it's not that I am aroused by fornicating Japanese beetles, but like you, I am a bad Buddhist when it comes to the gruesome part in their coitus interruptus. And who else, Maxine, but you would amuse lapse pacifist me in the sharing of the thrill of putting a 22 to the nose of a woodchuck? Yes, I have done it too, but Maxine, my muse, I am not as brave as you, would never work words into verse to share with my squeamish friends how success is measured in the fewest twitches. And that the ditch, Maxine, where I dump the carcasses, seems to be cleansed of the flesh. Next time I come, how I found a strange skeleton on a path deep in the woods. And yes, Maxine, it was not strange at all, but a woodchuck stripped to the bone. And it seemed like an omen or just a reminder that where I eat, I will be eaten, Maxine. But you knew that and more, that we render our fellow creatures in such stress positions, in extraordinary renditions of our indifference, or that we must please, Maxine, pay attention when someone we know says, fuck the Geneva Convention. Holy cow, Maxine, when that 22 is pointed at my nose, when my flesh is flung by the side of the road, when what's left of me reeks and defiles, spatters and leaks down, and my bones are trundled off in today's last load. Now that you are gone, Maxine, who will honor the shit that I have become?
That was a great poem, Dick. Thanks so much for sharing that. The repetition of Maxine worked really well. I love that. Yeah, great poem.
I love her work. The problem with a poem like that is figuring out how to like, do you have to note every line, every word? Do you note 2 words that come from a poem of somebody? How do you annotate that? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. I've seen like in the back of books, listing them out, as notes to the book, but I'm not really sure. Let me ask you before, what is your favorite book by Maxine Kumin? Is there something you'd recommend people get if they want to be introduced to her work? Because she's not a poet people talk about much these days.
Well, I think her book Still to Mow, which I think is one of her latest, it is sort of a new. She made a decision to not avoid being political in poems. I think she had for years like not being overtly political, and then she really came out strong. And Still to Mow, which is a terrific book.
Okay, great. Yeah, great advice. Yeah, well, we'll check that out. Anybody who wants to know more about Maxine Kumin. Thanks, Dick. Always a pleasure. We'll see you again next week, I hope.
Thank you.
Yep. So Dick Westheimer with When I Am Eaten, Who Will Mark the Eating? Let's go next to let's go over to India and do Niviti Karthik next, because she has to go to work, I think, soon. So let's try and see if we can get Nivi. Are you there, Nivi?
Hello.
Hey, Nivi, how you doing? It's great to see you again. Sorry that we haven't gotten to your, because we only get to the people on Zoom lately. And it's so early there, but it's great to see you. How you doing?
Fine. It's great to be back here, I think, after a long time for me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's always fun to see you. So what do you have to share?
So I have a prompt poem. So what I did for that was I actually Googled the top 25 most commonly used nouns. And the first, third, and fifth ones were units of time.
Interesting.
The first one was time, the third one was years, and the fifth one was days. So I wrote 3 quatrains, one with time, one with years, one with days, and ended it with a tercet in which each line had the word time, years, and days. So that is basically my prompt poem.
Very interesting. Well, let's hear it.
Time is measured in years and days. Walking through endless time, I search. Time is a healer of all wounds, you said. And so I wait for the time when I can live a life worthy of my time. A new year has come yet again, giving me the chance to right the wrongs of my previous year. But all it does is reinforce that my years on this world are increasing, while the number of years I have left to right my wrongs is decreasing. Each day passes by way too fast, a repeat of the day before and the day before that. I'm slowly losing hope that the next day that dawns will be the day that I will truly live. Yet I hope and pray that a time will come in the near future, hopefully this year, when I feel happy and ready to face each new day.
That's a great poem as always, Nivi. I can really relate to running out of time like that. There's just not enough time for all the good things we want to do in the world. So thanks for sharing that. That was excellent. And great to see you again. It's been, a month or 2, so it's great to see you.
I think from this time I should be able to, because I think your daylight savings is gone. So for me, it's just that 1 hour difference makes a lot of time. I get this 5 minutes in the rain getting ready for work to, sort of be like, okay, I can make 5 minutes work.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, that's another argument for making daylight savings time permanent, which is a discussion we have over here in the States. Thanks so much, Nivi. It's always great to see you.
Thank you, Tim. Lovely talking to you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, that was Niviti Karthik with Time is Measured in Years and Days. Let's go to a first-time caller now, and Joan Menapiece is here.
Okay.
Hi, Joan. How you doing?
Hello. Thank you. I'm fine. How is everybody?
We're great. So where are you calling from, first of all?
Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia.
Ah, very good. And then, let's see, did you email your poem in? I'm trying to find it.
I did email it. Did you not find it?
Let me look. I mean, there's a big list. I'm not seeing it yet. Let's see. Let me check my spam really quickly. If not, we can just hear you read it. But it is nice to see. I don't have it. Yeah.
It's a double abecedarian.
I don't have it. Do you want to try to email me again, and we'll swing back to you? Because it is nice to be able to see him.
Okay, yeah, I think it would be important for this one.
Yeah, so
But-
just call or just email it to openmic@rattle.com, and I'll come back when I get it.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, well, let's go next to another overseas open micer, and Spartacus is here. Hey, Spartacus, how you doing?
Hi.
Hey, yeah, great to see you. And you are
Great
in?
to see-
Are you in Greece right now, or are you back somewhere else?
Yes, I'm in Greece, in Athens.
Ah,
Glad to be here. Just came today from Cyprus.
Excellent. What are you doing in Athens?
Holidays.
Excellent.
Time for myself, finally.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What do you do for a living, by the way, Spartacus? That you're traveling all over.
No, I'm not traveling. I'm a school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working in schools, and I'm working in a school in Cyprus. And my first subject was teaching Latin in UK, and Greek, and now I'm teaching philosophy and Greek to a school in Cyprus.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, very interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that. And what poem do you have to share? I have it right here.
I've got a poem inspired by the song of a frog in the swamp.
Interesting. Poem inspired by the song of a frog. I love that title. Yeah.
Just before I start, I want to say, I just love Jack Grapes. I used to do some lessons with him when it was the pandemic, and he was so supportive, and the whole group of writers there was so supportive, so cool people. And for the people that they have done this class, I remember, because I was always anxious to write something and present something, because the other writers were super cool and really, really experienced writers. He told us the first time, you need to write something like, I went to Ralph's to get a chicken, and all of us had to do this exercise.
Uh-huh.
And it was so cool. And the students were appreciating, so much Zach, that they prepared a whole book that was called I Went to Ralph to Get a Chicken. and they started with the same sentence, and their text was so surprising, because everyone did something different.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And I remember I had a difficult time finding this book, because in Europe I couldn't find it anywhere from the Amazon, from the UK Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So I told them, I can't get this book. I cannot find it. And then Jack sent it to me, with the post and with a handwritten note. I was so glad to have this book. It was so nice. After I had read his book about the haiku.
Oh yeah.
So really, really glad to have one of his method writers.
Yeah, it's great. And Rattle came from that class. That was Rattle itself was a class chapbook in 1994. That was the first issue of Rattle. Nothing's within reach, but it's a chapbook that he made of his class students' work, and that's what Rattle came from. Alan Fox just continued it throughout all these years. And also on the shelf, I don't think you can see it. Can you see it? Those big books, I don't know, there's
yes,
2 shelves up. There's a big book there. There's 2 of them. There's a brown one and a white one. Those are his new books on poetry that came out not too long ago. So I think I want to have him as a guest. I have those books planning on having him as a guest. So that reminds me that I really should. We will. But anyway, let's hear your poem, Spartacus. Poem inspired by the song of a frog in a swamp. I love that.
Yeah. There were too many frogs when I tried to write my first line in the swamp. If only I thought I could create my poem away from this swamp. If only I could write like a well-written AI program created in a lab away from the swamp. If only I could learn words to fit all my feelings in the swamp. I wouldn't feel low when facing the swamp. I wouldn't feel at all the swamp. I wouldn't fall in the swamp. But at least, it appears, I wasn't alone in the swamp. There were many frogs in the swamp. Many frogs, making a lot of noise, were jumping into the water of the swamp. In the darkness of the swamp, the street light lights up one of the frogs of the swamp. The frog sits like a king in a discarded plastic bag floating in the swamp. The frog does its vocal improv in the small swamp. The frog stops singing in the swamp. Back to nothing. Frogs in the swamp.
Oh, that's great. I love that, Spartacus. Thanks so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure hearing your work.
Thank you.
And yeah, that was Spartacus Agnosterus with a poem inspired by the song of a frog in the swamp. And yeah, and this is the book. There's 2 books this thick. That's why I haven't had them on yet, actually. These books are 600 pages long, and I want to read them first. And so I'm just waiting to have time to read them. But this is Jack Grape's new book. I'll show you the cover. Spartacus, you have to look back and see it later. But it is Etherized Upon a Table, The Story and Evolution of Modern Poetries, a study guide for the perplexed, Volume 1. And then there's Volume 2 over there, too, by Jack Grapes. Here's Jack on the back right there. And so we do want to have him as a guest and talk about this book. But thanks for bringing that up, Spartacus, and thanks for being on the open lines right now. Let's go next to, let's see, do we have, yeah, Joan Menapace is here with her, we have the poem. I just have to find her on the, wait, where'd Joan go? Well, Joan sent her poem and now she's gone. So if Joan comes back, we have, where's we had? Oh,
yeah.
there she is. There you are. Hey, Joan.
Did you get it? I sent
did.
it again.
Yep.
Oh, good.
I have it now. Okay. So this is a double abecedarian, which is so an abecedarian is a poem where the first word in every line starts going through the alphabet, so they're inherently 26 lines long, and so it's artifice bang color here, and then a double though is you do the opposite from Z to A is the last letter of each line. So a really tricky form. It's tough to do these well, and this is a good looking abecedarian from a distance. Let's see how. Tell us anything you want about it before you read it, Joan.
This is in response to the recent states legislatures legislating against trans children capabilities to get health care and so forth. I'm an ally and also the mother of a trans daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of topical.
Yeah, definitely. Let's hear it.
So I'll read it. Double abecedarium forward. Artifice is implied when you strive to be a whiz-bang shapeshifter. Start with gooey color for foundation. Green, purple, neon pink. Spice the paradox. Don't be tentative. The successful are few. Eventually, your authentic self becomes the fave. Fathers may rave, mothers wonder who is you. Genders get bent, you can't change that. How much is too much elastic, stretch lycra, uber tight bindings? If you can pull it off, put it on, not only for theater. Just keep it up even if there is a queue knocking around, left after the LGBT. The signs read, do not stop letting yourself be you. Don't go incognito. March proud in a calico, kimono, lace suit, or leather skirt. For soon, newly observant people, percipient millennium officials will persist and ally with your fascinating schmick. Queers, reveal all yourselves and rebut the religious Raj rubbish, say I. So take charge onward, power it on high. Tick-tocking, unapologetic ingredients of humor, red pepper chili and marshmallow fluff. Vary your spice dance, worry not. Instead, Xerox, film, record, mix it. Own your music. You stir, you season, rub and dub. Zest with a dusting of pretty, guilt-free aroma.
Great. Love that. Tough form and really fun form and important topic. Thanks for sharing that, Joan.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hope you come back again soon.
Thank you.
It was Joan Metapace with Double Abecedarian Forward. Let's go to another first-time caller next. Odd Writings is here, also known as George. He is an NFT poet who has poems in the or a poem in the summer issue of Rattle. George, are you there? Yeah, I gotta unmute. There you go.
Yeah, here I am.
Hey, George, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. My video part has been kaput for many a month, so you're just gonna have my Odd Writings little thing up there.
Yeah, no problem. It's great to hear you though. And where are you calling from?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, this is the first time I've listened to a couple of Rattlecasts. This is maybe my fourth or fifth one, and this is the first time I'm actually, gonna be here on the live portion. So I hope it goes okay.
Yeah, well, definitely. I'm looking forward to this. And your poem that's come out in the summer issue is a what is the word for it? Where it goes front and back and
yeah, it's a word unit palindrome.
Palindrome. That I always get the confused. Just the word recall with now I can't think of the other word. Anyway, yeah, palindrome. So it's an entire long palindrome poem where it's read forward and backwards, which is just really interesting to see.
Yeah, but you got to do it word by word. There's somebody else, Anthony Etherin, who does actually letter by letter palindromes, which just totally blows my mind how he can pull that off. It's hard enough for me to be able to pull off one of these word by word ones, and I can just imagine how difficult it is to do the other way. But yeah, so those are the kinds of poems I like. I like them because they're kind of puzzling and I don't know. I'm a little I just like weird things, I guess.
Well, you are Odd Writing, so that makes sense. And and I see that. Glad we talked about it because this poem coming up is another palindrome poem.
Yeah. I this is one I haven't made an NFT out of it. I've mentioned it on a couple Twitter Spaces, but that's about it. So, and it's short enough. I figured that, this might work for a Rattle thing.
Yeah, and yeah. Let's hear it.
Okay. All right. Okay, here goes. Cold comfort. Children cold the comfort women bore. Snowmen drawn northward ever slowly, drunk the sun dead. Spirits, burning parents, bothered, and hot and bothered parents, burning spirits dead, sunned drunk slowly, ever northward. Drawn snowmen bore, women comfort the cold children.
Yeah, it's great. I love that last line. It's sort of a great last line is the key to these poems, I think. And the one in the issue has a great last line, too. That was Cold Comfort by Odd Writings, also known as George Pistana. Thanks so much for joining us, George.
Thanks.
Yep, talk to you again.
Okay, later.
Bye. Yeah, and George is a regular, too, on the Poetry Space on Thursdays on Twitter, because NFT poets tend to hang out on Twitter. Let's see. Carla Schwartz is up next, I think, going in line now.
Hey,
Carla, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. What an amazing night of poetry and interview. And I decided not to do my prompt poem that I sent you, but I sent you a link to another poem that just came out this week, which I actually wrote some time ago, inspired by the metaphor dice prompt that we had, way back when there was a prompt from the metaphor dice. And so I had this poem and I took out the metaphor dice metaphor. And this is what is left. And I sent you a link to it, I believe, right?
Yeah, I have it right here. The mouse nesting in our grill. And that episode, if anybody wants to go back and check, was Taylor Molly, who does the metaphor dice. Maybe around 100 or so, I think. Episode number, I'm not sure what, but yeah, and he has these metaphor dice that he uses to teach metaphor to kids in school. And so you roll the dice and you make up a metaphor based on your dice roll. It's really interesting. And then that was the prompt. So here, the poem generated by that, even though it's not included, it doesn't matter because poetry happened.
Exactly. And so this is the mouse nesting in our grill. On the vacant bed of iron slats, blackened with years-long use, caked in rancid fat, drippings from bygone steaks, the grill tools stored in plastic, perfect for the mouse to shred and form a mattress for her brood. She's gathered bits of drying grass, crisp oak leaves, and tangles of my hair discarded at the shower, all for cover, even though each day, as one blurs with the other, she shelters there, lodged in darkness, with her pups, 8 of them, curled and pink, nursing at her teats, until one day I lift up the cover, expose the nest to the morning sun, surprising both of us. Her blissful rest turns panicked escape for the mouse and all her babes, as many as can cling to her legs, with one balled up, dangling from her mouth.
Great poem, and I'd love to know, knowing where that came from. Thanks so much for sharing that, Carla.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too.
Yeah, Carla Schwartz with the mouse nesting in our grill. Next, let's go to Jerry Stephenson.
Hey, Tim, how are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Jerry? Getting in early today.
Pardon me?
Getting in early. You got to...
I know. I was snoozing. You woke me up. Great show tonight. I like that girl. Wow.
Great.
Fabulous stuff. I don't have any visual for you, I think.
Yeah, you don't. Do you want to, or are you
No,
good?
I'm cool with this. I'm having a technological breakdown. I sound like this Road to Hell by, what was the artist that wrote it 20 years ago? Yeah, I'm watching you on the phone and a screen because something's not working right. So you can just put up with the voice.
Yeah, that's totally fine. And you have Spring Thaw as your poem, right?
Spring Thaw, yeah. I got a bit of background on this one. I grew up in the prairies, and curling's a big thing. Farming's over, fishing's over. Everybody goes to the curling rink for 5 months, and they have a great time. And there's one term you need to know what a hack is. And a hack is when eventually you take a scotch to the ice and an axe to it, smash, put a hack in the ice so you put your foot in it to launch a curling stone. That's where it comes from. Okay, Spring Thaw. And this is probably 1963-64 to set the timing, because there's a reason. This was a big thing being raised on the prairies, aka Bonspiel Thaw. In elder times, no refrigeration for curling rinks. Sheets of ice became puddle-ridden. Brooms, sliders, team sweaters, skips, leader of the team, witnessed the enlarging bodies of water drowning the hacks. Why, everyone that could make a team booked a long weekend off. The wheels of the economy paused. The good times party clocks struck party, my dog's barking, sir, when temperatures dropped to minus anything. Broom slaps ice. Voices roar at rocks. Harder, harder. Size diminishing rings. Tease the stone to the button.
Oh, that's great. I think the dog likes the poem too, Jerry. He's kind of excited.
Yeah. Tim, thank you for a great show, eh?
Yeah, thanks so much. That's great. I didn't know that curling was a recreational activity. I mean, I have to admit my ignorance, but I assumed it was one of those older sports that people didn't really do anymore. So it's cool to hear that you actually go curling.
I got friends were phoning me on Sunday. This friend of mine, Jenny. Jenny Eve lives in Winnipeg. Said it's men's championships. You're on for the day? Huh? I forgot. What do you mean forgot? I said, well, it's Easter. Who cares? It's men's champions. And that's what got me going on this, because when a thaw came early in the year, they shut down. They couldn't have it. Anyways.
Yeah, that's great. Well, great story. Thanks for sharing that, Jerry. Always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Jerry Stephenson with Spring Thaw. Next is Audrey Friedman. Hey, Audrey. How you doing?
I'm good. Okay. For this prompt, I chose the word grant. I'm in the middle of reading a book of historical fiction, 1,000 White Women by James Fergus.
Oh, interesting.
It occurred to me how much they don't teach us in school, especially about Native American history. Reading historical fiction includes more than the curriculum. 1,000 White Women, James Fergus. I am reading about how Ulysses S. Grant traded women, granting the Cheyenne a most generous deal. He granted 1,000 white women to be brides. granted to tribesmen in exchange for 1,000 horses. Our government granted the natives the way to procreate and assimilate, and Grant promised women's reprieves to be granted from prisons and asylums. The Laramie Treaty granted the braves lands forever, or until gold was found in the Black Hills. However, the grants turned to ashes like rubbish in a fire. Grant us, females, God, a future in which we write our lives, not grant, so we ensure ourselves a granted status higher than chattel.
Oh, that was excellent. Great choice of that word, grant. One of those words that can be used many different ways and really flowed well through that word. Excellent, excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Audrey. Have a good night.
You too.
It was Audrey Friedman. Reading historical fiction includes more than the curriculum. Next up is Guy Chambers.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Guy. How you doing tonight?
Oh, pretty good here. I said that was some pretty good interview with Alexis there with exotic poems. I thought there was well done.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Good taste,
Yeah.
I say a lot of erotic poems can be done perfectly as long as it's good taste and everything else. They say it's part of life too, so you got to take a look at that.
It's an important part of life. There'd be no life without it, maybe.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Okay, this poem here. I just got the word cobbler. One time I just said, what can I do with that word? And actually, this is published in my book, Flying Kites in the Moonlight. So this is a poem. I just came out with cobbler, and I just came up with this poem here.
All
okay.
right.
Wrench, shoe stand, bit a cup of coffee, the fourth, the jury morning. A drowned person, scrawl face, murky mute, sludging thoughts. In a small room, emerged shoulder walls, seeming one more day, seeming another worrisome. Sweaty hands, weakness in the fingertips, stitching thorn threads on a dried out leather. Lifeless, strain-rooted, stumble, frustration, shackled to the floor. Trying fossilize, tears insight. Thereof, not at all to face onward. Logger, hardships, fluster, thick skin. Riddling, unblessed, unceasing, unforgiving, over and over and often. Unsparing time, enduring. The men, frail, ingrained soul with flaw hems. Enmesh, cold, stiffening feet, unbalanced, flat-footed. Put shoes on, tie up rigid laces. Nowhere near, not in the least, far from being, again, and again. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting poem. Cobbler. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jerry.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a good night. There's Guy Chambers with Cobbler. And next up, let us do... Oh, we have a first-time caller here again. Mustafa Sarwar is here. Let me see. Oh, disappeared. Where'd it go?
Thank you.
Yeah, hello. How you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great. From New Orleans.
New Orleans, excellent. Yeah, first time New Orleans caller too.
Oh, I'm so glad that you gave me the opportunity to come. From my accent, you can understand that my English is great. This is my first language. I'm joking. This is my second.
Sounds great to me. And it's better than me is my first language probably, and I don't have a second, so that sounds good.
I speak in Bengali.
Oh, excellent.
From Bangladesh. The poem which I would like to read today is Ghazal, the Newton's third law.
Okay, great.
That sounds pretty, kind of contrasting, because Ghazal is basically love, spiritualism, and so on. From my background of Bangladesh, I was listening to ghazal from childhood, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
That's my parents and brothers, sisters will all listen. And so, I'm very familiar with the ghazal structure. And so I tried to put physics into ghazal.
Yeah, that's
that's
great.
what I experimented.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll give a little introduction to my poem. Like you see that the contact frontier with NATO and Russia doubled after Finland joined with the NATO, in fact, a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at a one-dimensional map, x-axis, and you plot that point, original length, that's almost like about 600 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Then Putin attacked the Ukraine to reduce it. In other words, he will go reverse and bring it to zero. But guess what? It moved into the positive x-axis and it doubled. So that's action equal to reaction.
Oh, really?
That's
Interesting. Yeah.
Newton's third law. Okay. And I tried with ghazal. Putin's unprovoked war of choice. No lights. Death and darkness blacken. Newton appears from the heaven. Never thought it would ever happen. NATO's might must be rammed. Line of contact be cut and jammed. Putin's dreams are flattened. Never thought it would ever happen. Finland squeezed like a lemon. It remained neutral and never brazen. Now, rich in mesh of neuron, got a coveted chance to placken. Reactions, actions always get. Decrease and increase form a set, a mathematical set. Newton's law never slacken. In politics, how could it happen? The spectre of Newton appear not apple tree, but in world affair. Action, reaction, happily batten. Never thought it would ever happen.
That was great. Really interesting observation. And then to put it as a ghazal is really cool too. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Have a good night. Hope you come back again soon.
Yeah, I will. I'll keep on coming.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you.
Until you accept my poem.
And then never again. Okay. Well, thanks. I hope we have you for a while at least. Take care. Have a good night.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that was Abu Sawar with Ghazal, Newton's Third Law.
Yeah, I have my pen name, Mustafa Sarwar.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
My name is very large, Abu Kabir Mustafa Sarwar. And you see Sarwar, if you look at Starwar, drop the letter T, it becomes Sarwar.
Ah.
And my first name is Abu, there's the monkey. In Aladdin's, there's the monkey. So from monkey and then Mustafa is a Lion King. So it's a kind of evolution.
That is, yeah.
Ultimately to the superhuman Star Wars. Guess what? I used to teach geophysics, geology, and physics at the university. Monkey and then
perfect. Hang on, let me mute that. Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks so much. It was really interesting sharing that and talking to you, Abu. That's great. Let's see. Okay, next up, we have, I think, somebody, who is that? So Monica Garg, I think you're, if you're going to be on the Zoom, shut down your stream. So only watch it one place. I didn't mention that, but there's a delay. Not all streams go at the same time. So if you're still watching on YouTube or Facebook, but you want to come on the Zoom to share a poem, make sure you turn off Facebook and YouTube. Just X out of those windows and only listen on Zoom if you're sharing a poem, I should say, because I heard myself in the background there. And we'll get to you later, Monica. Next, though, we will go next in line, and we have Mike Bales.
Good evening. I had to work a little late, but I made it.
Yeah, glad to make it. Always good to see you, Mike.
I always like to kind of chill and get ready for these things, but sometimes my life is kind of a life on the run.
Yeah, I hear you.
I didn't repeat it every line, but the word I repeated was highway. It has to do with the 4 years and as a flagger and traveling for that. The poem's called In Every Story. I emailed it to you.
Yep, I got it right here.
Okay. In every story, the highway is broken as it has been for years. The highway is made of what's taken from the land. First driver in a lane of cars are stopped becomes a coincidental friend, though our meeting brief. The highway itself is a story of those who've come from other parts of the state to reshape the land, and a hotel becomes a haven for a day or a week. The owner of the hotel or his wife leaves a mint on the pillow to say welcome to this time and place along the highway. When coming back each day, I hear passing conversations of locals as I pass by the front desk about the goings-on in this town. After a few days, I say, I love it here, but for how long? After all the lanes are reopened, I wear my reflective gear to a diner for a bite of food. People look to me. Work on the highway is the talk of the town. The highway is the essence of the landscape as it rolls through Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, or some other place where life is a play. People live along the way. And I must admit, the highway is me.
Oh, excellent. Great metaphor there and great use of that form for the poem. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. In Every Story by Mike Bales. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, have a good night. Next, let's go to Carolyn Cotta. Oh, yeah, there's Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. How are you tonight?
Okay. It's pretty warm here today.
I think it's super quiet. I can't hear you enough to. Is there something you can turn up?
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, we see you right now. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's pretty quiet. I'll turn it up as much as I can. I'll turn myself down to balance it out.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, that is better. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to put my glasses on.
Okay, no problem. So what do you have to share?
Well, the prompt poem, the word I wanted to repeat is words, which is the title, words.
Oh, great. Okay, let's hear it.
Actions speak louder than words, they say, but words are important. Children love learning new words, while old folks struggle not to lose their familiar words. Through words, we gain knowledge and wisdom. False words bring us misinformation. Words can make us laugh. Words can hurt. Soft words of love, like a gentle spring rain, can produce a calm happiness. Strong, hateful words, like a hurricane, provoke fear and anger. Words are thought, written, read, and spoken, or thought and unspoken. Words have many uses, but life is more than words. Stuff happens, and simply there are no words.
Oh, excellent understated poem there, Carolyn. Great ending. I like that a lot. Thanks for sharing it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, have a good night.
Okay, you too.
Yeah, it was Carolyn Codd with words. Let's see. And I am trying to go a little quicker because we have a lot of people still on the lines, and it's getting to 2 hours. But let's see Nate Jacob next.
Hey there.
Hey, Nate. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I've seen worse cases.
So what do you have to share with us?
I did a prompt poem.
Uh-huh.
A few weeks ago, I mentioned a phenomenon called semantic satiation with you.
I love that phrase, yeah.
So I went ahead and wrote a poem about that.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
Using the same word over and over. It's titled Say Exactly What You Mean. Semantic satiation, for everyone, is a psychological phenomenon in which repetition causes a word or phrase to temporarily lose meaning for the listener.
That could be a form of poem, you know? You could call it a satiation. And,
not a bad idea, actually.
Yeah.
All right, let me read. Say exactly what you mean. If you mean it, and you mean for it to mean what it meant when first you said it, then say what you mean, but say it only once. I mean, twice at most. Saying it once means the most. Repeating it once means you really do mean it. But I never meant for you to doubt I'd caught your meaning. I mean, I could even say, I know its meaning without you saying it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be mean, though by your troubled mien, I can see you now mean business, mean to correct what is wrong. I just no longer know what you mean. What could possibly need correcting? You say I've been mean. I don't know that word. No idea what you mean. Know what I mean?
That is great. That works really well. You do sort of get lost in the sea of the sound of mean. It is great. Yeah, that's a cool effect. I've never seen a poem quite like that.
The brain does funny things.
It does. Thanks, Nate. Definitely a pleasure. Yep, take care.
Bye.
Bye. As Nate Jacob with Say Exactly What You Mean, a satiation, we're going to call it. Okay, next up, let's go to Bishwajit Mishra.
Hey, Tim, good evening. And
yeah, good evening. How you doing?
Happy Easter to all of you, whoever celebrated.
Yeah.
I have a poem, but I was wondering, can I read my poetry's poem
Yeah,
instead?
sure. Go ahead. Explain to us what it's about while I pull it up.
It's called A Whole, sorry, poetry's poem. A small lost in big, or the reverse. Just let me pull it up. Yeah, here. The whole. Are you able to pull that up?
Yep, I have it right here.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's the topic? What inspired it?
It's a few news items. I don't watch news like you say,
yeah, I mean...
but sometimes it just pops up on your phone. And then we changed the cable TV provider.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was testing. So I caught a flash of news here and there. And every evening I try to write a few lines. Sometimes I take refuge under haiku, if I don't. But I love haikus anyway, whether they can be haiku or not. But I love the short poems. So I started writing. I never thought this poem got away from me. And it's like flashes of things I have heard, it just came in. So I put that in the note for the poetry spawn, that it's hard to tie one news item to it, but you can pick any news item at random, and that should work.
That's interesting. Okay, let's hear it.
Small is lost in the big, or the reverse, the whole. One neighbor enters another's for a strip of the yard, turning it over barren from already a field of dandelions. Bridges span grand rivers, concrete monsters. Those are oceans replete with sonorous waves, lapping up at the shore, which actually are oases in the midst of deserts. That light blinds out, their pupils dazzled out of those filling the dinghies, daring to intrude upon the magnanimous seas, without any inkling of the unfathomable depth that hides the treasure. But what good are those to unearthed drowning? Not good even for tombstones. But elections are pillars that hold the oasis in place, must never bend, hook or crook. Their leftovers are going to be sprinkled like water bombing infernos. But brocaded dreams need sleep, a good one. Shut doors enhance the experience. Doctors recommend. Everything is earth after all, not just philosophically. Piss or water, all retrograded water, or either way you look at it, head or tail, it's the same coin. Drink if that quenches. Coats are fish bones, the center ones that hold the flesh together. Keep sticking to them, rather like cladding. Didn't Darwin or someone? It was long ago, and my history has never been good. Didn't whoever it was, a big guy, say that that's the law of evolution? Monkeys become men? Either way you look at it, head or tail, my history is bad already. And what good is that? Fighting the inevitable? Mirages, actually, a notch higher than shadows. It's all illusion anyway, so long as the leaves are left, grass or ferns. technically live still, go on munching, turning vegetarian. Enlightenment might be the residue, probably another inevitable, at least a good chances. Who needs a tombstone? Remember Buddha? All illusions. A placard here or there, a few twittering birds here or there. When the leaves are gone, they will look better on the falling branches, skydiving. And butterflies are narcissistic romantics, so don't play into the equation. After quantum maths, who should bother about 1 + 2 = 0? Everything is connected. So what does it matter? Which part gets what? The whole stays whole. A whole, too, is a part of the whole. So let's not waste time. Time is important, gives another dimension. Expansion, which might be the same as contraction on the tail. In any case, regression is what should be the ultimate mission. Someone should start first. Remember, it's all part of the whole. A few guns here and there, a few bombs here and there are tinsels, don't matter. A few loose cannons in the deserts too. And of course, the big N somewhere, the great equalizer, leveler. Even a whole is a part of the whole. That's what emancipated neighbors are for. Even if some get emaciated, blending into the whole, understanding is all needed to wipe out the slate, and it will be still the whole. Postscripts, and don't look for gods. They might hide in tombstones. Enlighten, look for the priests instead.
A very interesting poem. I love that phrase, that even a whole is a part of the whole. Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Bishop. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good night.
You have a good night too.
Okay. Yeah, there's Bishop Mishra with small is lost in the big, or the reverse, the whole. Interesting poem there. Let's go to Jennifer Elise Wang next. We have a few people left.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Jen. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. So I'm bringing both the Poets Respond and the prompt poem, a combo, just in response to what happened, the ouster of 2 of the Tennessee 3, and
the Tennessee.
I had a completely different poem in mind, but just
interesting.
Hearing that news and being outraged.
Who are the Tennessee 3? I don't even know who that is. That's how.
So they were, what is it? They were the 3 Tennessee state reps who protested against gun violence, and they were all reprimanded, and they were placed on trial by their own legislature. And 2 of them, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, the black men, were, I think they were basically evicted from, or expelled from the state legislature.
Okay.
And then the one who wasn't was Gloria Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like super unprecedented and just kind of outrageous.
Yeah. I'll have to read more about that because I don't really know anything. But yeah, go ahead. Let's hear it. Tell me what democracy looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. So I took the title from the chant that you often hear in protests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. In America, democracy is a brown paper bag, deciding who leads, rather than a paper ballot designed for democracy. A flimsy, common thing, yet bringing democracy's decline to a climax. 2 young black men, selected by the process of democracy, ejected from their roles for engaging in another of democracy's processes, while the process of democracy in the state legislature spares their white comrade, is what this charade of democracy has become. This representative democracy only represents a minority, with the money to manipulate democracy, to silence voices and votes, while challenging democracy's results by screaming fraud and recount. This is what democracy looks like. Bodies of children killed by guns, forced gender, forced birth, and white supremacy. America's democracy is dying with them.
Oh, that's a really interesting poem, especially considering that what is it, semantic satiation that Nate Jacob was talking about.
Yeah.
How that sort of, we're kind of maybe, that might be the best metaphor for what's happened to our democracy, is like satiation, is taking it for granted until it doesn't mean anything anymore. Very interesting poem to share here. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks, Jen. So Jennifer Elise Wang with Tell Me What Democracy Looks Like. Next, we have Brian O'Sullivan.
Hello.
Hey, Brian. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. Been having internet problems, but I'm back.
Yeah, I think maybe there's something, in some regions or something, there's some issues because people in different places have been having a tough time and other people not. So I don't know what's going on. But what have you got for us?
So I've got a prompt poem. It has a weird title, which is Asian with a hyphen in front of it. And it repeats the word document a lot.
Okay, let's hear it. I wonder if it's going to be semantic satiation or not. Let's see.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, Asian. Enclosed, please find the document you asked for. I hope you'll find that it's the document you need. The document required by the DMV, the document for which the taxman cometh, the document that documents the diagnosis, and the document that demands the drug, or the document by which the deed's defended, or the document in which it is recorded that the documents broke your back and comp is due you. And I hope you'll find the document of your dreams, the document drawn up by the first clock's hand, or the document by which the emperor donated, or the document that the queen purloined, the document that drove the locusts out, the document that caged the tyrant in, the first document ever Xeroxed, a document surely now minted, or the document in which it is recorded that Alexandria's documents endured, or the document with the data to solve for why. I hope document really meant to ask for this document, and that it's not just another document in the continuing documentary of asking the wrong questions, of building the house of documents. Instead, I hope we'll find a document that breaks the endless chain of documentation begetting documentation.
That's great. Yeah, definitely that satiation's going on there. It's funny that some of those poems have that. And I love your document move. That's very clever. Thanks for sharing that, Brian.
Thanks. Thank you.
Take care. That was Brian O'Sullivan with Asian. Two more up. I think we have Monica Dobos, here. Is that you, Monica?
Yep,
hey,
that's me.
Yeah, how you doing, Monica?
Oh, I'm doing great. I have to thank Alexis for the it's now or never. If not now, then when? Impetus.
Yeah.
I'm calling from Temecula, California.
Right down the road or down the hill. We could roll that.
I'm originally from Romania. My son is Indian. My son is somewhere in the mix. And I wrote this in response to John W. Evans's Rattlecast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately the Tennessee shootings as well. So here it goes.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I'm nervous, but I'm going to try to do my best.
You're going to be great. It's going to be great. Let's hear it.
Okay, all right. Do you like rain? I asked my husband of 15 years while liquid grapes pound on the car. Only in peak summer. I don't like cold rain. Well, you don't need to hang out and get drenched. You can just watch it from a distance, like a fair trade circus where no animals get hurt in training. Unlike marriage, I don't say that out loud. His wife got mauled by a bear. He's still a poet. She's dead now. Whose wife? He asks. I want Samose. John W. Evans, a Rattlecast poet, his first wife. Wait, she got killed by a bear? He whispers and gives me that. Why do you have to bring this up with our son in the car look? I'm hungry. Who wants samosa and some nice hot chai? I want samosa. Wait, who got killed by a bear? My son asks behind his outer space book. No one, Bunny. Just watch the rain, enjoy the green. You can't ignore me. I'm 11 now, and I can hear way better than you. She left a husband and 2 little ones behind. Or rather, it did. Okay, now, who knows how many rings Saturn has? My husband asks. Did they mention it in your book, Beta? That bear must have been really hungry, Mom. The universe is not a beast. Tell that to Evans. Tell that to the 6 Tennessee moms who will never see their children again. I don't say that out loud. Laika, on the other hand, was sent to space on her own, just so stupid scientists could test if living beings could make it out there. Of course she didn't make it. Who's Laika? Asked my husband. People are cruel. The universe just is. My son flings his hands in the air. Okay, I'm gonna order 2 samosa and gulab jamun, my husband adds. Divorce must be a hungry bear. I don't say that out loud.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, great dialogue there. What a clever son, too. Thanks for sharing that, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I hope you can come on again anytime. And you did great, too.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that was Monica Moo on here with Do You Like Rain? I asked my husband of 15 years. A couple people left. Tanisha Carr is next. Hey, Tanisha, are you there? Hi. Hey, yeah, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So, what do you have that you'd like to share?
It's the grieving policy. It's the same as many of us. Trying to sort of process, but at the same time, yeah, I don't know. Okay, so it's the grieving policy.
Okay, go ahead.
These states united in bullets through textbooks that will never write their young readers' lost lives. Little hearts. Into history, I trace time back to when the Second Amendment became a war on children. The history, it makes casualties of our future so casual. These falling leaves of newborn growth, a sick tree. The sun can't reach the weeping wombs, watering its soil, birthing grief. The world watches as another child dies in a mother's cries. When the bell rings, gunfire, terror in the frozen sea of eyes. The many isn't enough to force the bullets back through the barrel across the pull-down map along the back wall to the stone one of Congress. I imagine these bright souls leave this plane floating on a cloud of Michael's electric blue light, swinging from tires and monkey bars, basketballs, lemonade, pizza, and all things worthy of youth in hand as a chorus of angels greet them, vibrating peace so they feel love.
Yeah, I love that ending. And yeah, definitely a topic that we've been trying to cover here on the Rattlecast for so long because it just unfortunately keeps happening. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tanish.
Yeah.
Yep, have a good night. There's Tanish Carr with a grieving policy. Last up, we have Lucy Chow.
Hello, Tim.
Hi, Lucy. How you doing today?
Doing right. It's overcast and we're having a blurry, not very wakeful day, and it's strange. Feels strange.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, what have you got to share for us with tonight?
I've got a prompt poem, and that was an interesting and also a very difficult poem for me to write. But I like writing my heart poems. I have this little note for the readers, and I think I'll read it along with the poem. Nourishment, earth's difficult gift. As a teen, I was coerced by discomfort with my changing body into starving myself till my weight dropped to the point that triggered Wilkie syndrome, a digestive disorder which makes it even more painful to eat, thus forming a vicious cycle. This is further complicated by my spiritual distrust of food and an exaggerated fear that eating is always going to make me miserable, adding the soul's insult to the body's injury. For years, I have battled to overcome this fear, to reconcile my sick flesh with the generosity of our delicious earth. I have prayed to earth. In this poem, I imagine her speaking back to me. What is grieving your body? What is thieving your body? Why is your body wasting away, devoured in my bounteous body? What is it like to have a body full of joy? My body has only felt so full of hurt. My body hurts to kiss and bite and swallow soft, bruising red bodies of raspberries. My to receive golden wheat, beatific bread, the Savior's body. My body hurts when it's denied pleasure, and pleasure hurts my body with pressure. Oh body, why are you not a blue chicory whose sky blue body suckles sunny sky? Oh body, why are you not a colored finchbill, a leaf green body, riffling leaf green shade? Oh body, why are you not a sleek kitten, purring sweetly at a bird's prone body? Oh body, why are you not happy and easy as other furred, feathered, fronded bodies? But none had to steal felicity from your body. A body made to suffer might also rejoice. Something is grieving my body. Something is thieving my body. Ask your waning body, what's ailing you? What's failing you, my dear body? The soul, is that the body's misery? The soul that doesn't believe in the body, that becomes your body's self-disbelief. When the body leaves hope, it cannot relieve. You say, what is grieving my body is not my body rejecting belief or my body rejecting pharmacy, but belief rejecting my body. Body fields, look to weeds, look to sparrows, sparring sweet bodies, small generous bodies needing no medicine to heal internecine wounds, whole bodies. Teach your soul to touch you, dear body. It will learn to trust you, dear body. Then will your grieving ungrow, body, body and soul. Oh, dear soul, dear body.
Yeah, excellent as always, Lucy. That was a great poem. Great use of that repetition. Yeah, really powerful poem. Thanks for sharing it.
Thank you, Tim.
Yep.
Good day.
Yep, have a good day. That was a Lucy Chow.
Good day for me. And
good night for me. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. That was Lucy Chow with a Nourishment is Earth's Difficult Gift. Thanks for sharing that as always, Lucy. That's going to wrap up the show for today. Let's do the Saiku really quickly, and then I have 2.5 hours to pack, take a shower, eat dinner, finish the audio version, and catch a plane. So we'll see if I can do that to New York City. But let's see. So the prompt for this week is to... Oh, no. Wait, the Saiku. The Saiku for this week. It's based on the story right here. You know, I'm a baseball fan, as you might know. Coach some Little League, play a lot myself. And there's a study, climate change adding 50 homers a year in MLB, study says. And I was really prepared for this to be like a garbage science study, because there's this kind of thing where if you put climate change into a study, you know, it's bandied about, but it ends up being a terrible study. It happens all the time. This was actually done really well by Dartmouth. And they, 50 homers isn't, 50 homers per year is not a lot in Major League Baseball standards, but it is like genuinely caused by the less air density that warmer air has. They've isolated all the variables, and climate change is actually doing that. So very interesting to see that. My haiku inspired by that is right here. Pop fly, lost in the blue of the sky these Saturdays. Pop fly, lost in the blue of the sky these Saturdays. That is my Saiku for the week, and that is the show for the week. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. It's been a really fun one, as it always is. The prompt for next week, inspired by Alexis Rhone Fancher's love of photography and using her phone, like she said, to take pictures throughout that great book, Brazen. Write an ekphrastic poem about a recent image in your camera roll. So, most people have camera phones. Some people might not be. It might have a camera, probably. Find a recent photo that you've taken, or one of the most recent ones. Write an ekphrastic poem about that, whatever it is. Doesn't even matter if it's a fun poem. Find a poem and find a picture and do that. That is your prompt for next week. And that is the show for this week. So next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Julia Kolchinsky-Dasbach. Julia, you've seen her a bunch of times because she's had several Poets Respond poems. I think 3 in the last year, including Mir in Ukraine, which is one of the most popular poems we published last year about the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine. And her most recent book is The Many Names for Mother. She's got other books too. She's going to be the guest for Rattlecast number 190, Julia Kolchinsky-Dasbach. Monday, April 17th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great week in the meantime. I should say, too, that there's going to be no critique of the week this week, because I'm going to be in New York at the conference right then. So we're skipping this week for the critique, but we'll be back next Friday, a week from Friday, with the critique of the week too. But we'll be doing the Poetry Space over on Twitter if you're there from the NFT NYC conference. But anyway, Julia Kolchinsky-Dasbach next week, Rattlecast number 190, Monday, April 17th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'll see you then, and I hope you have a great week in the meantime. Talk to you later. Good night.